And welcome back to Backspace Academy. In this hands-on introduction to AWS storage services, we'll have a quick look at the options that are available for storage on AWS, and then we'll have a look at one of those options, being the Amazon Simple Storage Service, or S3 for short. We're going to create a bucket from the AWS Management Console. We'll add objects to that bucket, and then we'll download those objects back from the bucket. And then lastly, we'll delete that bucket completely to make sure that we don't get a bill at the end of the month. So the storage options that are available for us on AWS, the first one being Amazon S3, Simple Storage Service. And that is one of the serverless or abstract services of AWS. And what that means is that we don't really know what is going on behind the scenes with Amazon S3. We know that there's obviously going to be a server, there's going to be hard drives, there's probably going to be elastic load balancers and all sorts of things, but we don't need to be concerned about that. So we just need to know that we can create a bucket on Amazon S3, we can put objects into that bucket never gets full, we can just keep adding objects to it, and we can delete that bucket when we don't need it anymore. The next service there is Amazon Glacier, which is long-term archiving of data. So for example, you might have data inside Amazon S3, and over time that data is not needed anymore. It's obsolete, or it's old versions of software or whatever. It might be accounting records, and you want to archive that over to long-term storage that is going to be quite low cost. And Glacier is very low cost, the lowest cost option of the storage services. And so you can do that. You can store that in Glacier. The downside though is that if you want to get it back again, it's going to take you about 3 or 4 hours to get it back and restored from Glacier back to Amazon S3. The next option there is Elastic Block Storage, or EBS for short. And so that is basically just like a disk drive. It's block storage. And just the same as you can attach a hard drive to your desktop computer, you can do the same thing with EBS. You can attach an EBS volume to an EC2 server on AWS, and that will allow additional storage for that server. The next option there is the storage gateway. And so what that is a high-speed link between on-premises storage of an enterprise and to AWS. So if you would like to have a backup solution for your on-premise data storage, then you could create a high-speed network between AWS and your on-site storage, and that will be achieved through the AWS Storage Gateway. The next option there is Elastic File Service, and that is very similar to connecting a NAS to your network at home. And so that, in a similar way, allows multiple servers to access the same file storage. The next one there is the AWS Import Export Snowball, and that is basically, for want of a better word, a portable hard drive. And it is one with very massive capacity. For example, if you had a off-site storage solution on AWS that you wanted to implement, and you had petabytes of data that you need to get into AWS, you can organize with AWS to get a AWS Snowball device sent out to you. You can upload your petabyte of data onto that Snowball device. You can send it back to AWS, and AWS will import that for you to whichever service you're looking at, for example, to Amazon S3 or to Glacier or whatever. Now let's have a look at using some of these storage options with AWS. So here I've got the AWS Cloud in orange, and inside of the AWS Cloud, I've got a VPC, or a virtual private cloud. Now that VPC is our personal private space within the AWS Cloud. So what that means is that someone wants to come in here, or traffic wants to come in here from outside our VPC, it will be blocked. It won't be able to access those resources within our VPC. Now, by default, all AWS accounts will have a VPC created, called the default VPC, created in each region. Additional to that, you can create more VPCs if you would like to. So within our VPC, we can launch EC2 instances or EC2 servers within our VPC, and we can attach EBS volumes to these EC2 instances. And that's very similar to the way we would just attach a hard drive to our desktop at home. And in a similar way, we cannot attach multiple EC2 instances to our EBS block storage. So you can't grab a hard drive at home and connect it up to 2 computers as a block storage device. It just won't work. So the way that we do have multiple EC2 instances accessing the one device is that we use the Elastic File Service for doing that. So the Elastic File Service, now that is not located within our VPC. That is located within the AWS cloud. For our EC2 instances to access that EFS share, they need an EFS mount target. And what that EFS mount target does, it allows the EC2 instance, that EC2 server, to mount that EFS share as though it was similar to an EBS volume, like it was block storage. And that's in a similar way that you would use a NAS or network attached storage on your network at home, for example. And so that is how we would use that for multiple EC2 instances to connect to the one device. We can also use the Amazon S3 service to achieve the same thing as well. So with the Amazon S3 service, again, it is located within the AWS cloud, as is the Glacier Vault as well. So we can have storage of files within our S3 bucket, and then over time, when it gets obsolete, it gets old data, it's accounting data that's from years back, and we want to have access to that if need be for auditing or whatever, we can archive that over to Amazon Glacier. But if we want to get that back again into our Amazon S3 bucket, it'll take us about 3 or 4 hours to do that. So there is a penalty for doing that. Now, because the Amazon S3 service is not located within our VPC, we need a way of connecting from our VPC to the Amazon S3 service. And that is where a VPC endpoint for S3 comes in. And that allows our EC2 instances to go through that endpoint and to access the Amazon S3 service. Now here's a quite common example where you would have a large enterprise and they would be looking to have a disaster recovery solution to use the AWS cloud for backup and synchronization of data that is in their corporate data center. And this is quite a common example because a lot of large companies will go for AWS as disaster recovery service first before going to migrate their applications and everything over to AWS. And it gives them an opportunity to get their feet wet first before they jump straight into AWS. So on the left-hand side there, we've got the AWS cloud. Over the right-hand side, we've got the corporate data center in blue. So we have some on-site storage, and that might be petabytes of data. Might be a very large amount of data if it's a large enterprise. We would like to replicate and synchronize that data in Amazon S3. Now, the first problem we're going to encounter is that to transfer this data, this petabyte of data, over to AWS, using conventional techniques, using a high-speed data link, using the internet, whatever, is going to be expensive and it's going to be slow. And so that's where the AWS Snowball device will come in. So we can get AWS to send out to us a Snowball device to our corporate data center. And then we can upload our petabyte of data to that Snowball device. And then we can get that Snowball device and we can courier that Snowball device over to AWS. And then AWS will grab that Snowball device and they will upload it for us into the S3 bucket that we've created. Now, once that data is there, it will need to be synchronized on a regular basis. So to do that, if it is again going to be large amounts of data that we're transferring, we need to have a high-speed link between our corporate data center and the AWS cloud. And that is where the AWS Storage Gateway comes in, and that provides that high-speed link to a corporate data center and our AWS cloud. Okay, so let's go and have a go at one of these services. First of all, we're going to use the S3 bucket. And we're going to do something very simple. We're just going to create an S3 bucket. We're going to use the AWS Management Console inside of our browser, and we're going to upload some files to our S3 bucket. And then we're going to grab some files back from our S3 bucket. And then once we've done that, we're going to tear it all down and get rid of it to make sure that we don't get a big bill at the end of the month. So let's get into it. Okay, so here I am in the AWS Management Console. We select Services. We'll go to our Storage Services and select S3. And that'll bring us into the S3 Management Console. So if we don't have any buckets already created, we'll be presented with this welcome screen here. So the first thing we want to do is create a bucket. And we'll put in a unique bucket name. Now that bucket name needs to be unique across the whole of AWS. So you need to provide something unique. You can't use the same one that I'm using here. So just make up a bucket name and put it in there. And we'll leave the region as US East North Virginia, and we click on Next. So I'm not going to talk about versioning or logging or tags, because this is really just a very, very simple, quick introduction to the Amazon S3 service. So I'm not going to talk much about this, but we're going to get very much into this further on down into the course. So we'll just click on Next. And again here, we're not going to get too involved in the permission side of it. We'll just accept what is there, and it's basically restricting access outside of ourselves. So we just click on Next. And then there's just a summary there of what we've selected. So we just click on Create Bucket. Now that's just created my backspace -test -bucket. Now your bucket name will be something different to that. So that's how simple and easy it is to create a bucket to store objects, to store files on AWS. Very easy. So let's just click on the link to that bucket. And again, we've got no objects inside of this bucket yet, so we're presented with a welcome screen here. So we'll click on Upload. Now the easiest way to upload files is simply just to drag an entire folder over and drop it on the form there. So I'm just going to go to my Windows Explorer, and if you're in Mac, use a Mac equivalent or the Linux equivalent, and just drop a folder. And it doesn't have to be anything particular, but make sure it's something not too big, or you'll be there for quite some time for it to upload. And just drop that on that form there. And that will get that ready to go. And so we just click on Next to accept that. And again, we're asked about permission. So we're just going to leave it as private. We're not going to grant public permissions. We're not going to get too much involved in this at all. This is really a very simple introduction to get you used to using AWS. We'll click on Next. And again, we have different types of storage classes. Some of them are more reliable than others, and some of them are more expensive than others. So again, we're just going to select the standard storage class, and we'll click on Next. And then we have a summary of what we've selected. So we'll just click on Upload. And after a certain amount of time, that will upload for us. So that folder is now just finished uploading, and there I can see it is. So if I just click on that, and I can see that those files that are inside of that folder have also been uploaded. So I can also go the other way now. So now that I've uploaded these files to Amazon S3, I can look at downloading these files as well. So I'm just going to select one of these files. So this one here will be fine. And we select More. And then Download As. And that will download, or it will create a download link for that file. So if I click on that download link, then that file will download for me. So that's all I'm going to show you now for the Amazon S3 service. It's really just a very simple introduction to AWS and how the Amazon console works, but the Amazon S3 service it is quite complicated when you get into it. And so throughout the course, we'll be doing more and more and more and building on what we know. But the purpose of this is to get you hands-on and getting you used to using the AWS console. So a very important thing, now that we've created some resources and we're not using those resources, is to delete those resources. Otherwise, we're going to get billed for those resources. So the way we can do that is that we can go back into our backspace test bucket. So just click on the link up the top here. And then we can select that folder. We can again go to more, and we can click on delete. And that's deleted all of the files within that folder. So another thing we can do now is just to delete the actual bucket itself. So instead of clicking on the link to the bucket, I'm just going to click outside of that link in here just to select that bucket. And of course, we could have just emptied the bucket from here, but I just wanted to show you a different way as well. So now we'll just delete this empty bucket. And we need to type in the name of the bucket. And that's deleted that bucket for us.